bring in another NFL Network legend, Brian Baldinger.
Hold on, Mastermind.
Baldy, what is up?
What's going on, guys? Good to be with you here. 22 days away.
Yeah.
From county, and we're working and grinding and seeing if we can find a few nuggets here for the Broncos who need a few nuggets right now.
Yeah.
Yes, they certainly do. And Baldy, my question to you is: we broke down someone, I believe Mike Clay from ESPN, put out the roster rankings, and he had the Broncos as the second worst roster in the NFL. And we kind of broke it down yesterday. Of can you add a rookie quarterback to a roster that's that bad, or do you need to build up a roster first for a year or two before you add a rookie to that group?
Well, if you get a chance to get a great quarterback, you just begin the process. You hope you don't ruin them along the way with, not the right pieces around them. But that's maybe what Jared Stidham is for, to start this season. But I believe if you have the opportunity to get what you think is a franchise quarterback, you have to do whatever it takes to get it. And then if you don't feel like you could get him, then you just keep building pieces and try to strengthen the team around them the way San Francisco was, so that Brock Purdy could step in and play at the level that he did. I mean, that's the perfect example of a guy, 7th-round pick, Iowa State, comes in and plays great, but the roster around him was great as well.
The one strength that, according to Mike Clay, the Broncos roster has is the offensive line. And I think I would agree that it probably is like a top 10 group in the NFL with that question mark at center still. You would imagine, though, that if you're going to put a rookie quarterback into a team that has a pretty weak roster, that would be the one group that you want to see pretty strong is the offensive line, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I remember when the Cowboys, it was bought by Jimmy Johnson, and, they were a dreadful team, and I was there at the very end. But the one thing they had was, they had Nate Newton and Mark, 2-A and Kevin Gogan. I mean, they had the basis to protect Troy Aikman for that first year and thereafter. But they had, and so I would say I would agree with that. However, I never think you could be a top 10 offensive line without a strong center. And I think it's a big hole in that line right now. Fortunately, this is a good draft for centers.
Great to see your face, Baldy. Not gonna lie, it's great to see you. I'm looking at building this roster because these guys are just quarterback, and I'm looking at a roster that probably needs some help. If you're sitting there at 12 and your quarterback that you want, obviously, to trade up for is gone, and you're not going to take quarterback at 12, where the Broncos sit, do you feel trading back and acquiring assets is probably something that needs to be looked at pretty heavily because of where they stand as a whole?
I do, James. I mean, I think there's a lot of teams that could be in that category, but obviously Denver doesn't have a second-round pick. I think this is a good draft to be in the second round.
Yes.
To have multiple second-round picks, the way the Eagles do, the Jets do. There's some teams that have multiple second-round picks. I believe this is a good draft for it. You can find starters at key positions in the second round of this draft, especially the way tackles and quarterbacks, some elite receivers are going to fly off the board here. So I would seriously consider that because I don't think – I mean, I can't sit here and rank all these rosters, but I would agree that the Broncos are at the bottom right now talent-wise. And it doesn't look like it can get cleaned up real fast. And one way you could do that is by acquiring picks and then, like the Rams, hitting on those picks the way they have over the last few years without number one draft picks.
Yeah.
So, Baldy, let's say the Broncos do go down that route of not going quarterback in the first round this year, whether they stay at 12 or they trade back. What position or what player would kind of be a dream pick for them in that scenario?
Well, I mean, if you trade back, I think you have a chance for, the number one center in this entire draft right now.
Oh.
When you take a look at Jackson Powers-Johnson at Oregon, or Graham Barton. I think Graham Barton's going to be a terrific center at Duke. He was left tackle the last 2 years, played center his rookie year when all the centers got hurt. I know he could play it, and I've talked to him. He's talked to a lot of teams. They all kind of look at him at tackle, guard, center. But I think center, number one, because I feel like fix the offensive line if you get a chance. This is a good draft for centers. Go get yourself a stud, and put that together. Say, okay, we got our 5. Now we can start kind of building out from there, whether it's pass rusher, corner, receiver, some of the need positions right now. I would try to fix that position. I think you could do that if you trade down. You can still get one of the two guys I just mentioned, I would think, with the pick still in the first round.
Interesting. Going back to quarterback. Of course.
I tried to follow your path, James.
So I tried to lead him to water.
But the quarterbacks. We love the quarterbacks. We haven't talked to you since Michael Penix Jr.'s pro day, where he ran that 40-yard dash. Should we care about that?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah? Okay.
You should pay attention to Michael Penix. I said I did a podcast with Michael maybe a month ago, and I met him during the Super Bowl, and I said, I got a podcast. You got to come on, Mike. Let's talk about things. And so, anyways, we talked about a lot of things, transferring from Indiana and not being recruited out of high school and going to Washington and getting to Dunze and McMillan and Polk to stay with Kalen DeBoer and his offense coordinators in Seattle now, all this stuff. And then we got to, when you get healthy, are you going to be one of those, low 4.6 guys in the 40? And you're going to run. He sort of started laughing at me. He goes, I'm not running any 4.6. I go, so you're like in a 4.5, like a Russell Wilson type. He goes, no, I'll be in the 4.4s. and so then you go, I mean, there's not many guys that could do that. I've talked to Kyler Murray. He said he was never timed since Allen High School in Texas, Like Lamar never got time. Some guys, you just know they run in the 4.3s and 4.4s, but they never got time. He ran in the 4.4s like Anthony Richardson did. I think it's significant because he wasn't asked to run a lot. He didn't have to. He's really good at reading progression, had a really good dynamic pro offense, and so he beat you from the pocket. But when he had to run, he ran away from people. So I think that's significant right now. The fact that, unlike Jayden Daniels, who looks to run and is a great runner, I don't know if he's built to run, but he's a great runner. I don't think Michael Penix is looking to run. He's looking to beat you from the pocket. And the reason why your question is significant is when he does have to run, he runs away from people.
Yeah. I saw Kyler Murray play at Allen, Baldy. I went to that stadium down there. Saw him play while he was in high school.
You know what's funny, James, about that down in Texas is because I have a farm not too far from Allen. Of course. They built the football stadium first. And whatever money's left over, then they build the school.
It was the best because the marching band performs and nobody marches because the band's so big, the entire field is taken up by the marching band. So everybody's just really standing in place and performing at halftime because the band is so big. And with Penix, I agree with you, Baldy. Teams are kind of like some care. Everybody is concerned. Some care less. When they look at the medical of Penix. I'm looking at this pick if tight end is a strange position in the top end of the draft, right, Baldy? Just because of the way tight ends are paid. You pick one at the top. Are you getting the value you're looking at? But we're looking at the value of that position in this league now. If Brock Bowers is sitting there at 12, but you still don't have a quarterback, is that tight end still extremely valuable at that pick?
It is in Sean Payton's offense.
Yeah. I think he could play the slot, too, for you. He could play the Michael Thomas role.
He can. You just look at the history of Sean Payton and big tight ends, whether it's Jimmy Graham, Ben Watson, whatever. Like, he's had tight ends that were difference maker, especially in the red zone. He's maniacal about red zone offense, and sometimes you just get a big tight end that you can throw it up to. Or a guy that can win in the routes or against man cover, whatever it is. He's a difference maker. And so I believe that was a real missing component to this offense a year ago and why they didn't finish drives and why there might have been certain blow-ups on the sideline where they didn't score when they got close to the end zone. And so I do think that it's a real consideration going forward to get an elite player, an elite talent like that can really win in the red zone specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a really exciting pick. Despite it being the tight end position, Brock Bowers is a beast. But enough with non-quarterbacks. Back to quarterbacks here. Baldy, maybe a guy that's just not talked about around the NFL a lot is Bo Nix, yet he still seems to be that potential first-round quarterback. Do you think he is worth taking in the first round, specifically at 12 for the Broncos, or is he a guy you maybe wait on?
That's high.
Well, it's high. I mean, look, he's played 61 games. And you go, that's a great thing. Nobody's ever started 61 games. But in 61 games at the college level, you would think that he'd even be more dominant, than he was. And he was good, but he wasn't, they couldn't beat Washington, for example. Mm-hmm. Like when he had chances to beat Washington, they played him 3 times the last 2 years. He couldn't do it. I think it almost works against him playing 61. I don't think playing 12 games like Mitch Trubisky or Anthony Richardson is the answer. But I think somewhere where you could see a steady growth, like in Penix. Okay, you leave Indiana, you go to Washington, you start 27 games, you stay healthy, and you see this meteoric rise, and his level just go up, up, up. I didn't see that from Bo. But I think Sean Payton knows exactly what he wants. And it would surprise me if Bo Nix was his guy. And I'm not here to knock Bo Nix, but I think Sean Payton knows exactly what he needs after spending, 15 years with Drew. Like, I think he knows what it takes at that position.
Yeah, and I think in going back and watching him, it feels like all these other quarterbacks, people talk about the receivers they have. Like J.J. McCarthy, it's like the great team around him. Or with Jayden Daniels, you've got Malik Neighbors. And there's almost kind of this cop-out there. Whereas I don't hear people talking about the talent that Oregon has as much. Troy Franklin, a potential first-round pick, with the running back they have there, who could be, he should be one of the top running backs off the board. There were so many times where Bo was just throwing the ball to somebody who's wide open, and in Bo's defense, he's getting the ball to him and letting him run, but it's throw the ball 8-10 yards to the guy who then takes off and runs for a touchdown. Is that kind of the concern there? Just that it's a lot of wide open receivers short who then run with the ball afterward? And why would that not be a perfect fit for an NFL offense?
Well, you're what you're looking for. You can make the case. Like every single quarterback is a projection because the game is so different at college than it is. And that's why teams consistently miss on quarterbacks because the game is so different. And so, the Oregon offense, the way that they run it, there's just, you start the game with 20 completions. Now, what do you do when it's 3rd and 14 and you're doubling Troy Franklin and you got to go someplace with the ball? I can see when Christian Gonzalez is all over Rome Odunze in 2022 and, Penix got to go someplace else with the ball, and he does consistently. So, you have to project all this. You go through these quarterback reels of all these quarterbacks. Spencer Rattler, name one. And you're looking for NFL-type throws, the tight window type throws. And, the throws where you're going against, a man-free defense and every guy is getting pressed the way Notre Dame did, against Caleb Williams this year. And you're looking to see if he can make those throws. And so all of a sudden, 61 games gets narrowed down to like 50 throws over 6 years. And that's kind of what you study. And you see, all right, arm strength, accuracy, off balance, off schedule, scramble drill. You're kind of studying those throws. You're throwing almost everything else out at that point.
Michael Penix hanging out with the Raiders today, Baldy, on an official visit. That's not super surprising. Baldy, well, I want your take before we go on the edge. It's still a need, I think, for the Denver Broncos. Jared versus Dallas Turner. What do you see between those two guys? They're different, and just kind of break the two down that could be at the top of the group for a lot of people.
Well, Jared Verse is bigger. He's bigger. He's a classic 4-3 defensive end. I think Dallas Turner is a true T.J. Watt outside linebacker, pass rusher, can play, in a 3-4, can play the 4-3, can play with his hand down. He just has elite skills in Dallas Turner. Like I see an advanced skill set that he has. The Jared Verse, like if you watch him, I don't know, against Graham Barton or whatever, he doesn't overwhelm me when I see him against a pretty good offensive tackle, although the length and everything that you're seeing there is all there. I've watched a guy like Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M. If you just put in the Alabama game, James, you're like, oh, he's a top 20 pick.
Yeah.
You see everything. You see unbelievable suddenness, pass rush ability. He can close with the best of them with his speed. You just don't see it week in, week out. But in the biggest game that he played, he had his best game that I saw him play. But Dallas Turner looks like he's the cream of this crop at that position. And I believe he'll be the first edge off the board. It's just a question right now of who that's going to be with and who's going to take him right now.
Baldy, last one for you here. Kind of taking a big picture look at the NFL right now. The news of the day is the Texans trading for Stephon Diggs. Are the Texans the biggest threat to the Chiefs in the AFC now?
Ooh.
Well, I think so. Because, I mean, look, Baltimore is still going to be very good, but they've got a lot of changes from defensive coordinator to certain talent drain on the offensive line. Patrick, Queen gone. Lamar still has to show us in a big spot that he can just go throw it the way you got to throw it to win these huge games. I'd say Houston certainly. I mean, I thought Nico Collins looked like a number one receiver to me last year. So to get Diggs and Nico and Tank back and Schultz and Mixon, and I think Dameon Pierce is going to have a big bounce back year. Like I would say, and what they've done defensively, I think Houston with Baltimore right now are the two teams. And we got to see the health of the Jets throughout the season. But I would say they're in that conversation for sure that they are loading up with Danielle Hunter now and now Stephon to go big and to go win big in the postseason.
Man, and Baldy, we win big every day that you join us. So thank you so much for rocking and rolling with us and all your insight.
Thanks, guys. You bet, man. I'll talk to y'all soon.
See you, Baldy.
James.
Man, awesome insight from both NFL